we've taken on a number of issues today, from the interest rate by the Monetary Policy Committee to the redesign of three notes of the Naira, 200, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira notes, to the poverty level of the country. We have also taken on the issue, of the teaching of the Komani oil fields, frontier basin exploration by the NNPC and its partners, with the expectation that this will boost revenue, create jobs, be an integrated oil and gas project, and provide opportunities in terms of, scaling up for Nigeria, even if Nigeria is having also to deal with the rest of the world with an energy transition mix. And then finally, we talked about the reinstatement, if you like. Professor Kemi Rotimi says he doesn't like the word ban and unban, but now history is back on the curriculum. I might as well just start with you, Professor Awurawo, because, history is your main fault. So, these issues.
Yes, I would like to begin with the history topic for obvious reasons. I'm a historian first and foremost, and like Professor Kemi Rotimi said, we're all very unhappy when history was taken off the curriculum for the junior schools several years ago. And, we had our say then. We did protest, but the government had its way and, got it off, so that history was only, in the curriculum for the senior secondary school, and of course, up to the university level. So we are glad, we are happy that history has been reinstated, into the curriculum. History is too important, for the educational system to, remove at the lower level, because, scholars have said, not to have the knowledge of one's past is to be forever a child. The importance of history is too critical, which is why all serious countries that are concerned with development, they ensure that the history is taught across from the lowest level up to the highest level. So Nigeria didn't do well, not to belong to that league for those many years. And so if there is one good thing that the troubled Minister of Education has done, is to preside over the reinstatement of history into the curriculum, which we are all very happy about. Dr. Abadi did ask one question, that why is history important, compared with maybe computer science, engineering and all. The answer would be that it is not the issue of either or. You need all of them together. You need computer science, you need the engineering, and all that, but you also need history because you need the knowledge of the past. To give you an example, shortly after the inauguration of Obama in 2009, January 20, 2009, I went to the US. I went to General Motors headquarters and I ran into one very influential person in the Obama government who had come to General Motors, and we discussed. He told me when they were trying to see how to resolve the global economic crisis, the first question Obama asked was, how was this crisis resolved in 1929, 1930 when there was a similar global economic crisis? He wanted to learn from history. He wanted to know what was done then as a guide to what will be done from 2009 onwards. That just summarizes the lesson of history. If you don't know your past, it's difficult for you to do well in the present and, of course, to project into the future. So we are happy that history is back, into the curriculum. Now, to the other issues, I just go over them very quickly. 16.5 interest rate is too high in my mind. I think Emefiele and his group are just following the bandwagon. Countries that have just 2% interest rate and they are increasing by a quarter of a percent, of 1%, which brings them to 2.25%.
Well, the general trend is 75 basis points.
Yes,
as we saw recently in New Zealand.
Yes, and we were already 12, 13 when those who were zero were increasing. So this bandwagon of because other countries are doing it, we must do it. If people borrow, if the cost of borrowing is too high, it discourages investment and productivity. We all know that. And so we will not say because other countries, we have a global inflation condition, and other countries are increasing, and who were zero before, and we were already 12, 13, must also increase. We must be very careful about this thing. When cost of borrowing is too high, it discourages investment, borrowing, and then productivity. And then the link between that and reducing inflation, we must also be very careful about it. How much does it really influence the reduction of inflation? We know that there are other factors that influence the inflation in the country, not just the issue of interest rate and no interest rate. To my mind, 16.5 is too. How many countries in the world have this much high rate of interest rate?
Sir, Turkey has 83%.
Well,
inflation rate.
You can't within your fingers.
Sri Lanka.
Yeah, the country. See the countries you are mentioning. Sri Lanka. Anyway, so my advice is that the CBN needs to be careful. Some of these models in classical economics have been proven to be anachronistic and antiquated, and we need to take a look, not just as applying them as they are. People have done a critique of some of these models and found them not to be as neat and elegant as we once thought. So we want the CBN and the team to critically look at all of this before they join the rest of the world in just increasing, just because everybody else is increasing. Anyway, that is right away. And then the Naira, well, I was opposed to it. I was opposed to it because, the reasons given were not convincing. In 2007, when Soludo attempted to change the color of the Naira because he said, that would improve economic development. I was in Plattsburgh in New York. A Ghanaian was around me and he was jubilating, and I told him, just watch it. It is not by changing the color of a note that will make for productivity and development. It's what you do, internally. And now we spoke recently, and I reminded him what I told him then in 2007, and he just laughed. So just changing color of notes is not what we really need. Productivity, doing the right thing, the right policies is what we need. We know what has happened to our oil and gas. We know what has happened to SMEs, which are issues that the speaker analyzed. These are issues that we need to address, not just by changing the color of Naira notes and we say, all our problems will be solved. Ghana did that in 2007. Soludo wanted to do it. Fortunately, President Yar'Adua listened to us, who said, it's a waste of money. That is not what you need to do to, make development happen in the country. Ghana that did it, I wanted to emulate. Ghana can now see that not just by changing the color of, knocking off zeros in the case of Ghana, that will make you to, have this thing. So anyway, maybe they'll be able to monitor the flow of Naira, of notes and all that, and that will be the positive from that policy. Finally, let me comment on the oil field, the marginal field that was, discovered. It interests me because, I've always said there's an oil field in my mother's land, OMB 26, and yes, and I'm not very happy with how my people are treated along that line. When I go home, I try to calm them down. That you have to make sacrifice. We all belong to Nigeria and all that. And fortunately, in my area, we don't have so much agitation and all that. The discovery of this field, there's something that the commentator mentioned. It's talked about balance. I just hope that the government will learn from what has happened in Niger Delta in these oil fields to ensure that the right policies are adopted and the best practices are taken in the way these oil fields are the exploitation will take place, such that the tragedy that happened in Niger Delta will not happen. And if good things are done in Bauchi, I'm sure it will also influence things positively in the Delta. That's why I'm interested. And we are just watching to see, how the government proceeds with that. But like he said, we need all the data to be able to do what is right. We need all the information, required, so that we don't just go and waste money. What kind of crude? Is it the sweet light one or the heavy one like the Saudi one? I mean, all of those details must be understood so that we can gain maximally from what has happened.
Well, Professor Urawa, at least one big takeaway is that you are one of those people who say what the CBN has done is to pop Baba Blue on the 1,000 Naira note just to change the color. But I guess it's more than that.
Yeah, it is.
It's certainly more than that. Professor Akinterewa.
Yeah, let me try to provide a direct explanation on your question, importance of history. If anybody wants to understand from an objective standpoint the importance of history, I will refer the person to the inaugural lecture of Professor Akinjide Osuntokun in 1998 in UNILAG. When he gave his inaugural lecture, he gave an idea, an explanation of how, for instance, history can be an instrument of nation building. Even just last week, he gave another lecture on
nationalism.
the genesis of
nationalism and nation building.
Yes. So, to the extent that even Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed made it clear at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs that he will want to have a copy of the lecture to be reproduced and given to his students, since he is lecturing public policy and things like that. You see, if you want to appreciate the importance, you can begin to ask, is there any discipline that does not have its own historical dimension? Rightly, Professor Awurawa now drew attention to the fact that he met someone in the US. He told us about Obama's experience, who now wanted to know how a problematic was addressed during the 1929 financial crisis to see whether they could be relevant. Apart from the fact that every discipline has its own history, when you are studying, when you are in the university, they normally begin with the historiography, with the historical background, with what had transpired before what you are doing currently. So you need this history. As a matter of fact, the issue is that it's most unfortunate when policymakers will not think deeply before reversing a policy. A policy as a strategy is quite different from a policy as a decision. When, for instance, you will need to take tactical policies for the purposes of strategic policies, long-term objectives. So in this case, I think that the problem should not just be to compare whether history is as important as science, as ICT subjects. The world is moving. The issue is that if Nigeria is to be relevant in the foreseeable future, especially in the making of a new world order, if you do not have your own history, if you do not begin to teach people from the basic level, if they become an ambassador, for instance, is it when you are now appointed, designated as ambassador, and then you now organize 1 week, 2 weeks training for them to move around the country, that will be enough? No. Now, one's history must be underscored in such a way that cumulatively, at higher levels, you'll be building on it. So when you know yourself, when you are happy that, look, you know the history of your environment, the progress, the development will be very natural. As a matter of fact, I think that the NYC project can be a good instrument where when people come and they are sent to other areas quite different from where they come from, they teach the history of that particular community, and then they will be conversant, and as they move from one community to the other, they will be better educated. I think this is how we can really take advantage of history as an instrument for nation building. Now, when we move to the issue of the university, for instance, I think the prayer of my brother, Kemi Rotimi, which he taught, was not answered by God. I would just say that it depends on the time he said the prayers. Probably he didn't say the prayers very well. God answers prayers at all times, but God can only answer your prayer when you have a very clean mind and so on and so forth. That is part of the historical point there. Now, on the oil project...
Are you accusing Professor Rotimi of praying at a time when he had a foul state of mind?
Well, you see, I do not want him to believe that God does not answer his prayer.
Okay.
God answers prayers, but he doesn't tell you when that prayers will come into account.
Maybe your recommendation is that for God to answer prayers, you must be in a state of complete holiness.
Of course, yeah. Okay. So that is it. So since he doesn't have the, what I would say, the complete frame of mind all along.
Okay, I will convey your message to
even God says the smallest in sin cannot stand before him, and you cannot be in sin and be asking.
I will say Professor Rotimi is a sinner.
No, everybody is a sinner.
Prayer.
Everybody is a sinner.
Okay,
but if you don't have a clean mind,
just go.
If you don't have a clean mind, you cannot
defend
himself. And ask. Yes, of course.
He must tell us whether he sinned overnight.
Yes, I will ask him. I will find out. Now, you see, the issue of Kolmani oil project. You have made a number of beautiful points during the week. I had the opportunity of watching your discussions in particular, and the various comments made, particularly from the perspective of Professor Awurawa too. But you see, I want to move beyond the conventional arguments and then to capitalize on one particular factor of analysis that you, Dr. Abati, raised. I think it should be on Tuesday or Wednesday, I cannot remember precisely. And that is the issue of environmental social governance. And I want to do my analysis from the perspective of political economic approach by basically looking at it differently. For instance, I'm looking at a situation that this oil find, this Kolmani oil project, people believe that yes, it will generate a lot of employment opportunities. We will have more revenues and so on and so forth. But let us look at the other side of the coin. For instance, I am looking at the oil find as a factor that has the capacity to strengthen Boko Haramism. Security-wise, I am looking at it that, look, we are likely to be challenged by more insecurity as a result of the oil find. And this basically because of the geopolitical location of the oil find, of the project is in the northeast. If you look at Boko Haram targeting to install itself there, although government has told us that they have put them away, they have been technically neutralized, and so on and so forth. Northeast still remains the terra cognita of insurgency. And I'm looking at it again from the perspective of what Muammar Gaddafi had said that, look, there is this intention to struggle to ensure that if Nigeria cannot be totally Islamized, it must begin from the north. And in the north now, the starting point is northeast. So if you now have an oil find, if you have the Kolmani, project there, I am thinking that the international conspiracy, and I will link it to the issue of Chevron and Shell having been given the contract in 1993, and now giving us the report that they couldn't find oil.
In commercial,
yes. And now they now have to withdraw. Now, about 10 years after, they could not find what they couldn't find in 1993. I am aware of how international politics is all about. Could it have been conspiratorial?
No, but these new explorers, Shell and Chevron, are not involved. These are new partners. The new partners are Sterling Global Oil, the exploration arm
I
of
listened to
NNPC,
your analysis.
a new Nigeria development
I followed your analysis. I noted all those things there.
Okay.
When you were discussing following that one, as a professional student, I was writing copiously all the points, and I took time to now study. The issue is that you are trying to give me the impression that the new actors, the new stakeholders are quite different. They are not linking up with Shell and Chevron all along. But you see, in international politics, please, all these cooperation and diplomatic notes, economic notes being circulated, we know how it works. I am saying that hypothetically, there's nothing to suggest that Chevron and Shell had not withdrawn for the purposes of a more convenient time. I'm only saying that, look, at the end of the day, if we have some countries who want Nigeria to be partitioned, to be divided, and since why we are now talking about rejection of fossil oils, etc., is it not because of the position OPEC is generally taking, and they now have to develop electronic cars, they don't want to be using oil, etc.? They were forced to, in the belief that, look, we do not have technology to quickly develop, and they were doing that. But I think that this Kolmani oil project, as good as it is, we do not have to go along the world to follow what they are doing. We need to be more security conscious about this particular place. Finally, on the interest rate, I will just put it interrogatively this way, to say if, for instance, the interest rate was, I think in July 2022, if there was increase from 13 to 14% on the basis of 100 bips, and if from 13% to 14% in July, now to 15.5% in September. On September 27, we didn't have any meaningful reduction in inflation. And now we still further increase it by another 100 basis points from 15.5 to 16.5. Now, with the expectation, according to the CBN governor, who said that by end of next year, the inflation will have been reduced from 21.09% to about 15%. I think this is an unnecessary imagination. There is nothing to suggest that this inflation will be resolved. Other factors should be considered.
Well, Prof, it's called economic orthodoxy. Economic orthodoxy teaches us that when there is high inflation, you tighten monetary policy. And that's precisely what CBN is doing. Previously, the Central Bank of Nigeria adopted an accommodative stance. By January this year, they decided to tighten monetary policy. And it's not necessarily because they are trying to copy what other countries are doing, even if there is a global linkage, at that level. But simply, it's just traditional orthodoxy about how to deal with inflation. Anyway, let's leave that. Let's leave that to the professional economists, not dilettantes like us. The Federal High Court in Lagos on Thursday ordered the federal government and the airline operators of Nigeria to maintain status quo over the proposed establishment of the national carrier Nigeria Air. The court also adjourned proceedings on the matter till February the 13th, 2023. The judge, Ambrose Luis Alagua, made the order pending the determination of the suit filed by the registered trustees of the Airline Operators of Nigeria, AON, Asman Air Services Limited, Air Peace Limited, Max Air Limited, United Nigeria Airline Company Limited, and Tobras Aviation Limited. The suit has Nigeria Air, Ethiopian Airlines, Minister of Aviation Hadi Sirika, and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, as the first to fourth defendants. The federal government had selected Ethiopian Airlines as a preferred bidder for Nigeria Air and said the national carrier would take off by the end of the year. But the Airline Operators Union had kicked against the move, saying that Nigeria Air should be a wholly Nigerian investment. Basically, the Airline Operators of Nigeria and their representatives, those airlines mentioned, are saying that Airline Operators of Nigeria should be given the right of first refusal, and that they do not think that Ethiopian Air is a fit contractual party to take over Nigeria Air. And they think that the procedures that have been put in place are too vague and unfair, and to that extent should be declared null and void by the court of law. And they say that they are also interested and they should be allowed an opportunity to make a bid for Nigeria Air. And in any case, they think it should be a wholly Nigerian business. These are the grounds on which they've gone to court. And what His Lordship has done in the High Court is to say all parties should revert to the status quo antebellum until the determination of the substantive suit. But anyway, here we are. Professor Awurawa, let me start with you again.
Well, we need to first ask a question. What does the government stand to achieve by establishing a national carrier? I thought when, the government, when the president spoke about it and the minister, they talked about national pride, nationalism. Countries are having their national, carrier. Nigeria does not have, and Nigeria should have its flag. If that is the case, then the airline operation of Nigeria will have a point, because the whole purpose then will have been defeated if, Ethiopian Airline will now be the one managing. I mean, how does it sound that the Ethiopian Airline is the one now having the upper hand, majority share, or I don't know. I looked at the document and, the purpose will have been defeated. The question to ask is, the airline, the AON, don't they have the capacity to do what Ethiopian Airline, is said to do, for which the agreement has been reached with them? If the answer is yes, then Nigeria has no business with Ethiopian Airline. But it would seem that the Nigerian government is looking more at business professionalism and profit. That Ethiopian Airline will be able to, given their very excellent running of their own airline, will be able to do well. So it's a tricky thing, really, that the government needs to take another look at the whole, everything, put all the cards on the table, and make a decision. The judge has done well to say, okay, revert to the status quo, but we expect that they will take up this thing expeditiously, because we know how courts, run things in the country. The thing can even run, the current government, the time might even expire, and they are still going back and forth to court. I hope these things will be, looked at expeditiously. The government will also take, the step of a political solution. I mean, looking at it again, and if they think that Ethiopian Airline will be the best, they can explain to all those who are taking them to court and resolve it along that line. Otherwise, the court then will run its process. But whatever the case, what I think is, whatever is best for Nigeria should be what takes place. The UN should look at its own position vis-a-vis what government stands to achieve, national pride, and a business that runs well, that runs profitably.
Professor Akinterwa, briefly.
Let me just take a cue from the last word you used, national pride. If you look at the reports, Ethiopian Airlines website, we are told that Nigeria Airlines, Nigeria Airways, whatever the name, Nigerian Air has been listed as a subsidiary of the Ethiopian Airlines. The name is Nigeria Air. And now Nigeria Air will now be put as a subsidiary of Ethiopian Airlines. Where is the pride? No, really, I think that our policymakers in this country, we need to sit down. We need to interrogate and ask them questions, whether they are thinking clockwise or anti-clockwise. We need to ask this question. Now, for instance, the airline operators, the association that took them to court, complained that there is unfairness, undue competition, that the Ethiopian Airlines will be given 15 years, moratorium, which has not been given. And then when you look at all this situation, how do you promote Ethiopian Airlines interest to the detriment of Nigeria something? No, really. If you are weeping, you must learn to see also.
There's a popular saying for that. Sukumus remembers. Wow, okay. Thank you, Professor Akinterwa. Thank you very much, Professor David Aworawa. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati from our entire team here in Lagos. It's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.